No one cares about how tired you are. No one cares how early you woke up or how late you stayed up last night. No one cares about the excuses you carry in your head, the pain in your body, or the doubts whispering in your ear. The world doesn't stop to ask if you're ready. It doesn't slow down because you're struggling. It just keeps moving. And if you want to keep up, if you want to separate yourself, you have to work harder. The world doesn't reward effort. It rewards results. You can train all day, sweat through every rep, feel the burn in your muscles and the exhaustion in your bones, but none of that matters if it doesn't translate into performance. Nobody hands out trophies for trying. Nobody remembers intentions. They remember outcomes. They remember who showed up when it mattered and who disappeared when pressure arrived. You can tell yourself you're working hard, but effort is invisible until it produces something undeniable. That's where most people get confused. They fall in love with the feeling of effort instead of the demand for excellence. They want credit for being tired, they want recognition for struggling, but the scoreboard doesn't care how much energy you spent getting there. It only reflects what you delivered. Results require a different level of honesty. You can't hide behind long hours if those hours aren't focused. You can't hide behind passion if your skills aren't sharp. You can't hide behind talent if your preparation is sloppy. Results expose everything. They expose discipline. They expose habits. They expose whether you were willing to do the boring work repeatedly, even when there was no immediate payoff. That's why excuses sound so loud when results are quiet. When there's nothing to show, people start explaining. They talk about circumstances, timing, bad luck, lack of support. But results don't need explanations. Results speak for themselves. They don't argue. They don't justify. They just stand there undeniable. If you want results, you have to respect the process, but you can't worship it. The process is a tool, not the goal. The goal is domination of your craft. The goal is reliability under pressure. The goal is being counted on when everything is on the line. That kind of result doesn't come from casual work. It comes from precision, from repetition done with intent, from holding yourself to standards higher than anyone else expects from you. Every day you face a choice. You can do what feels productive, or you can do what actually moves the needle. One builds comfort, the other builds separation. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it leaves you average. Separation hurts. It demands focus when your mind wants distraction. It demands discipline when motivation disappears. It demands accountability when nobody is checking on you. Results are built in moments that don't look impressive. Early mornings when your body is stiff and your mind is slow. Late nights when fatigue blurs your focus. Reps that don't feel heroic. Film sessions that feel repetitive. Corrections that bruise your ego. These moments stack quietly, and one day they show up as dominance while everyone else wonders how it happened. People will say you're obsessed, that you're doing too much, that you should relax. Those comments usually come from people who are comfortable with their limits. Results don't come from listening to comfortable voices. They come from listening to the voice that demands more, the one that asks if this version of you is really enough. Effort without direction is just motion. Direction turns effort into force. You don't just work hard, you work with purpose. Every drill has a reason. Every repetition has a standard. Every failure is studied, not ignored. That's how effort becomes measurable. That's how work turns into progress. When results become the standard, excuses lose their power. You stop asking how hard it was and start asking how effective it was. You stop celebrating effort and start correcting inefficiency. You stop chasing praise and start chasing precision. That shift changes everything. Results don't care about your mood. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They don't adjust to your emotions. They demand consistency. They demand professionalism. They demand that you show up the same way on your worst day as you do on your best. And when results finally come, they don't come as a gift. They come as a reflection of every decision you made when nobody was watching, a reflection of whether you chose convenience or commitment, a reflection of how seriously you took your craft when it was just you, the work, and the silence. The world will never ask how hard it was. It will only ask what you produced, what you delivered, what you proved. Everything else fades into background noise. And what remains is the evidence of who you really were when effort stopped being enough and only results mattered, when the pressure increased and expectations rose, when the margin for error disappeared and the demand for execution became absolute, when showing up wasn't optional and performance was the only language that carried weight. Discipline matters more when no one is watching. That's where it's real. That's where it's tested. Anyone can look locked in when the lights are on, when people are around, when there's applause waiting at the end. But discipline isn't built in public. It's built in isolation. It's built when there's no reward, no recognition, no immediate payoff. When no one is watching, there's no pressure to perform for others. There's only pressure to be honest with yourself. That's the moment where standards either hold or collapse. That's the moment where you decide if your work ethic is real or just a performance. It's easy to skip a rep when no one will call you out. Easy to cut corners when there's no coach standing over you. Easy to say you'll make it up tomorrow. That's how average habits are formed. On a quiet compromise at a time. Discipline is choosing not to compromise, even when the consequences aren't immediate. Nobody sees the early mornings, nobody sees the empty gym, nobody sees the repetition of the same move, the same drill, the same correction over and over again. That's why discipline there matters more, because it's not fueled by ego, it's fueled by commitment. You're not doing it to be seen, you're doing it because it has to be done. When no one is watching, excuses sound reasonable. You can justify anything in silence. You can tell yourself you're tired, that today doesn't matter, that missing one session won't change anything. Discipline is shutting that voice down, not by arguing with it, but by acting anyway. Talent shows up when it feels like it. Discipline shows up every time. Talent waits for the right conditions. Discipline creates conditions. That's why discipline wins in the long run. Because it doesn't depend on mood, motivation, or confidence. It depends on decision. The work done in private sharpens you for public moments. When pressure hits, you don't rise to the occasion. You fall back on what you've rehearsed. If your private standards are low, your performance under pressure will expose it. If your private standards are ruthless, pressure feels familiar. Discipline in silence builds trust with yourself. You start to believe in your preparation because you know what you've put in, not what people think you've put in, what you actually did. That belief becomes calm. That calm becomes confidence, not loud confidence, quiet confidence. There's no shortcut around this. You can't fake discipline when it's time to execute. You can't borrow it from someone else. You either earned it alone or you didn't. And the moment things get hard, the truth shows up. Most people want discipline to feel good. It doesn't. It feels repetitive. It feels boring. It feels lonely. That's why most people don't stick with it. They need excitement. They need praise. Discipline doesn't care about any of that. It demands consistency without entertainment. When no one is watching, you're building your identity, not your image, your identity. You're deciding who you are when there's nothing to gain but progress. Those moments define you more than any public success ever will. The strongest habits are the ones nobody applauds. The meals you eat right when nobody knows. The extra film you study when nobody asks. The fundamentals you clean up when nobody would notice the mistake. Those details compound slowly, quietly, relentlessly. Discipline doesn't announce itself. It shows up as readiness, as precision, as control when chaos hits. People call it clutch. They call it instinct. They call it mental toughness. What they're really seeing is hours of unseen discipline expressing itself all at once. If you only work hard when people are watching, you're training yourself to need an audience. And the moment you're alone, your standard drops. Greatness doesn't work like that. The standard is the standard, whether the room is full or empty. The hardest days are the most important ones. The days when skipping would be easy and justified. Those are the days discipline is either strengthened or weakened. There's no neutral outcome. Every decision leaves a mark. No one will ever fully understand how much work went into your performance. And that's fine. It was never about them. It was about knowing, without doubt, that when it mattered, you were ready because you did the work when it was quiet, when it was uncomfortable, when the only witness was you, when quitting would have gone unnoticed, when discipline was the only thing standing between who you were and who you were trying to become, when the routine felt endless and the results felt far away, when staying consistent required faith in a process that hadn't paid you back yet, when showing up was a decision made over and over again in silence. Separation is built in silence through relentless work. It doesn't happen in big moments or loud announcements. It happens when everything is quiet, when there's no spotlight, when nobody is paying attention. That's where the gap starts forming. Not overnight, not in dramatic leaps, but in small, deliberate actions repeated until they become a standard. Most people chase motivation. They wait to feel inspired, energized, ready. Separation doesn't wait. It moves regardless of feeling. It's built on routine, on showing up when it's inconvenient, on choosing the harder option when the easier one is right there. While others negotiate with themselves, separation is being constructed rep by rep. Silence is uncomfortable. There's no validation there, no applause, no feedback telling you you're ahead. That's why most people avoid it. They want noise, they want confirmation, they want to know they're doing well. But silence forces honesty, it removes distractions and leaves you alone with your standard. Relentless work doesn't mean chaos, it means precision. It means knowing exactly what needs to be improved and attacking it daily. Not everything, the right things, weaknesses don't disappear on their own. They have to be confronted. That confrontation usually happens alone, away from praise, away from attention. Separation grows when you're willing to repeat the fundamentals long after you've mastered them. When you refuse to get bored with excellence. When you understand that what looks basic is often what decides outcomes. The great ones never outgrow the basics. They deepen them. While others are distracted by comparison, you're focused on progression. Comparison is loud. Progress is quiet. One drains energy, the other builds it. Separation comes from understanding that the only real competition is the version of you that's comfortable. There will be days when the work feels pointless, when improvement is invisible, when effort doesn't feel rewarded. That's where most people stop. That's where separation accelerates, because the work doesn't stop just because the results are delayed. The delay is part of the process. Relentless doesn't mean reckless. It means consistent. It means no long breaks, no dramatic pauses, no disappearing when it gets hard. It means staying present, staying locked in, staying committed to the routine even when the excitement is gone. Silence teaches patience. It teaches you to trust what you're building without needing proof every day. It teaches you to focus on inputs instead of outcomes. Outcomes come later. Inputs are controlled now. That mindset keeps you moving forward when others lose direction. People will ask when it happened, when the jump occurred, when you separated. They'll assume it was sudden. It never is. It's the accumulation of thousands of quiet decisions, the mornings you didn't skip, the reps you didn't cheat, the standards you didn't lower. Separation is not about being better than everyone. It's about being unreachable by those unwilling to do the work. Most people could do what it takes for a week, maybe a month. Very few can do it for years. Time is the filter. Relentless work is what passes you through it. When pressure hits, separation shows itself. The game slows down, the moment feels familiar. While others tighten up, you settle in, not because you're special, but because you've lived in discomfort long enough that it no longer controls you. Silence also protects you. It keeps you from wasting energy on opinions. It keeps you from chasing validation. It keeps you focused on the craft instead of the crowd. The more silent the work, the louder the result. There's a point where the work changes you. Not just your skill, but your mindset. You stop looking for shortcuts. You stop hoping for breaks. You stop expecting fairness. You understand that separation is earned, not granted. Relentless work builds an edge that can't be borrowed or copied. It's personal. It's earned in hours no one saw and sacrifices no one counted. That edge becomes confidence. Not the kind you talk about, but the kind that shows up under pressure. The distance between average and elite is not talent. It's tolerance. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for pain. Tolerance for doing the same thing over and over without losing intent. Silence strengthens that tolerance. By the time people notice, the gap is already wide. The work has already been done. There's no catching up to years of quiet commitment. Separation doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself when it's too late to close the distance, when the habits are already ingrained and the standard is already set. When the silence has done its job and the relentless work has reshaped who you are into someone who no longer waits, no longer hesitates, no longer looks around for approval, someone who moves forward automatically, driven by a standard built far away from the noise.